Graham and Roy's dog is enjoying it. That's for sure.
Ken, just imagine.
No, he's unmuted.
So yeah, I've got lots to say tonight. Lots to say, and lots to drink.
Evening, everyone. So, firstly, I don't have a French accent. I'm an Irish man working for a French winery, and there's an Irish connection with the Laurent Miquel family. So, Neasa Miquel, who was supposed to be on this evening with me, is actually being tied up. So, I'm hoping she can get on. She's trying her best, but she's traveling right now as we speak. So, we're based down in the south of France in an area called the Languedoc area. It's the largest growing area in France. Over a third of the wine in France is produced down there. And it's probably fair to say that over many hundreds of years, many of the French armies were vin de paix or vin de table. They would have got a glass of wine daily. So mass produced and not a huge amount of focus on quality up until the last 25 years. So Laurent is one of these new generation winemakers, and you'll have seen from the video, he's quite a young man. Huge focus on viticulture practices, etc. We have our own wine bottling line, which wouldn't be the normal down in the south of France. But I suppose to just speak about the Miquels is that they're very bold and quite innovative. And you would have seen from Mark's slide from the history of the family. So it's 8th generation, and they have a son who's called Sean. So there will be a 9th generation. And we would be seen as the largest independent family run winery in the south of France. So that's quite...
I like the idea of Sean Miquel. That sounds a good Irish-French combination.
Yeah, there is. And they're very true to both of their backgrounds. So French and Irish background continues to play in a lot of things that they do in terms of wine production and marketing, etc.
Can you explain the Irish link, Ken?
Yeah, sure. So Neasa started as an au pair in the south of France. And she went down when she was 18 or 19 in the mid-90s. And she met Laurent, who she thought he was a cool dude, and he had a car, and he was in his early 20s. And they met at a nightclub, and she came back to Dublin.
It was the car that swung it.
It was the car, yeah. It was the car. At the time, he wasn't. Their family were making wine. He actually, as seen as we're talking to UK people, he worked in Nissan in Sunderland for 3 years, and he's an industrial engineer by background. So that's where all this...
Nessa's just arrived. We're talking about you, so block your ears.
Oh, brilliant.
Hello, everybody. I'm late.
Neasa went down to the south of France in 2001, and she threw her lot in to marry Laurent and become a winemaker's wife, and she's been the driving force of the business since then. So the Miquel family are quite innovative and like to challenge what's going on. So in the early 70s, that man that you've seen in the picture and in the vineyard visits is Henri. That's Laurent's father, and he planted Syrah in 1972, which was seen as quite bold and radical because no one else was planting Syrah in the south of France. And as you would have seen from your event last week, which was very much a Rhone Valley focused event, that's where the Syrah grape originates in France.
We're drinking Albarino at the moment, and I've got to say I'm drinking it with an indecent amount of pleasure at the moment and speed, it must be said. And it's one of those wines I think actually develops well. I don't think you want. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me otherwise, Neasa and Ken, that whether how well it ages. But I think this is drinking beautifully now. It's fresh. It's got citrus. It's got minerality. It's quite creamy, and it's quite round. It's got freshness, but it's quite soft. It's not sort of sharp until you open the bottle, Ken, back in Paris back in February. I never expected to see an Albarino other than in Spain. So how did it make its journey down to the Languedoc?
Yeah, so Albarino is a grape that's normally associated with Galicia and also the north of Portugal. So the Vinho Verdes often have a large percent of Albarino in them. The grape, they believe, was brought to Spain by the monks of Cluny, so down from Burgundy through the Camino route, the route where
Santiago.
would have come down, Santiago.
Pilgrimage route.
Yeah, and they would have brought that down about 400 years ago. So Alba means white in Spanish, and Rino they think comes from the Rhine Valley. So a close relation with the Rieslings. So if you think about German Rieslings and things like that.
That's interesting.
So it's a white grape variety that has a lot of natural acidity as it grows. And we have planted it in the Corbière, which is actually an area of a lot of limestone. So chalky soils, but like you get in Champagne, very chalky soils, and higher in altitude in the foothills of the Pyrenees. So what we did, we actually bought a vineyard in the foothills of the Pyrenees in 2009. And Laurent's dream was always to bring that grape variety back to France. We thought 400 years was long enough to leave it with the Spanish, and we should bring it back across the border, back along the pilgrimage route. And we planted it in an area which is Corbière. If you think of Corbière, perhaps you've tasted some red Corbières in the past, bigger, sort of more rustic red wines. And we, in the middle of all this sea of red, have planted white Albarino on a limestone plateau. So when you taste the wine, you get that beautiful natural acidity. And because it's had some time in bottle also, you get some of the lovely minerality coming through, and that gives some of the roundness and the softness on the finish. But the nice acidity allows it to really age quite well.
You've mentioned the like traditional Galician Albarinos. How would this compare?
With the Spanish one, you mean?
A couple of differences. This is actually planted in the French style, so double cordon royal. So in Galicia, because they don't have as much sun and they have a lot of dampness in Galicia, they actually plant it on high trainers, really high up to get enough sun. We actually have quite more sun in the Languedoc. And so you get a little bit of more ripeness and fullness on the palate. And then I think it's the minerality that makes the difference. It's that French, almost like Chablis or Sancerre, you know, that sort of tingling on the thing. That is a little bit more of the French touch or the French style of winemaking. Because we had to launch this wine in France. And of course, French people always want to have a reference point. You know, you serve it to them. They say, well, and you say, do you like it? And they say, well, what's it supposed to taste like? And you're like, well, there is no reference. This is French Albarino. It's something completely new. But some people thought it was like Picpoul on steroids, you know, Picpoul plus.
Look, I think everyone's really enjoyed Neasa, your Albarino. Everyone's absolutely loved it. I think there's also been, really good feedback. This is one of the best smelling corks in all of the tastings, says Andrew Dixon. That's
best what? Best named cork.
Very nice. And I think, some people have, going to start on the Bardou. Well, that's Ken. Ken's starting on the Bardou. I think there's quite a lot of hot anticipation for the Bardou, actually. Okay. And we've got 20 or so minutes left. I don't want us to run out of time.
Yeah, we are.
Mark, quick question from Paul. He'd like to know whether, I'm assuming due to kind of changing global climate, whether it's getting kind of too dry and too hot in the Languedoc like now. And actually maybe Neasa, maybe you're the best. I could answer
that. What I would suggest is the vine is the thing that loves and comes back to coming back to Syrah and what you do. The vine loves poor soil, it loves dry soil, and if you stress a vine so that where nothing else will grow, it produces a small amount of good quality fruit. So the drier, there's more. If in a sense, within reason, the more stressed out the vine is, the better the quality of the fruit it will produce.
Yeah, so it's one of the big challenges of working down here. Is it's very easy actually to grow big jammy wines because we have a lot of sun. Yes. And not a lot of we get a lot of rain, but it's concentrated in a small amount of days. So when it rains all day for like 3 days. I don't know if you heard about last week over towards Nice. They had a huge rainfall and, you know, whole villages were swept away. And so when it rains, it really rains. So what we've done is we've actually built or dug some lakes in our vineyards. So we choose the lowest part of all the valleys and we dig out a hole and we, when it rains, we fill up the lakes. And then we use it to give little drips of water to the irrigation to all the vines throughout the growing season, so that you keep that nice balance and good freshness in the wine. So you would have tasted in the Albarino that lovely freshness that comes from the soil, the grape itself, but also the fact that we can give it water all throughout the growing season. And it's one of the things that we've been doing for the last 30 years here. And I suppose the rest of the world is now catching up with the need to actually work with nature to create balance in your vines. And harvest water, treasure, you know, it's a really valuable resource that you've got to hold on to. So that's one of the things we've done. We've also planted our vineyards north-south. So if you imagine the rows of vineyards are like this. And if you plant them north-south, you get the morning sun hitting the grapes and the evening sun hitting the grapes. Of course, the sun is not too hot and will gently ripen the grapes. But at midday, the sun is hitting the top of the canopy. And that will allow the grapes to be shielded by the leaves. So if you plant north-south, you allow your grapes to ripen really gently and slowly and not be too affected by too hot of a sun in, you know, July, August when it gets really hot.
The Bardou, which is a sort of a 20-pound bottle of wine, pure Syrah, aged aged in barrels, and you can tell us about the specific aging in a second. You get a lot of the tannins. You get the flavour from the oak and the tannins, and those tannins give you grip and complexity, and it also gives you that extra dryness. So when you swirl it around, comparing to the first red, you compare the second one having to have a slurp. You get a much drier texture. You know, you feel sort of that dryness and those tannins on your gums and on the sides of your cheeks, on the inside of your mouth. But there's a beautiful fruit, the beautiful Syrah fruit there, and I guess this is 2016 vintage. This has got legs. This will go for, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 years easy. And I don't know whether you have any sort of museum stock to say what's the optimum.
Yeah, we have 2008, 2010 that are tasting really, really nicely now.
Are you auctioning any of those off tonight?
No, we're not doing more auctions every time, Rachel.
But yeah, it's a wine that, like I said earlier, it's got some nice natural acidity in it, so it will age really nicely. What happens if the wine doesn't have the acidity, it gets too jammy and goes too fast, but the acidity will allow it to really age nicely. So this is a single vineyard. Bardou is the name of the vineyard itself. It was given to Laurent when he was a child. The vines are about 35 years old, and vines are like people. As they get older, they produce less. They're less productive, less, go. But the fruit they do produce is better quality.
Can I just interrupt? I like to feel I'm getting a bit more productive as I get older myself.
Are you getting better quality, Mark? But that's just a double win.
That's just.
But actually, so with old vines, you get low yields, and low yields mean very, very concentrated fruit. So you get this wonderful concentration of flavor from the Syrah fruit because it's older vines. And the vines have dug really deep down in the soil, so you get all kinds of subsoils and mineral extracts coming in, which just give complexity and depth to the wine. And because it's so concentrated, we can put it in oak barrels, small oak barrels, 225. So we put half in new oak, which gives a really, new oak gives a lot of flavor to a wine. It gives that caramel, gives those toasted flavors, the vanilla, all those nice flavors. And then half is in second use oak, which is a little subtler, but also allows the wine to age really nicely and develop the secondary characteristics. So on the nose of this, it's not just about primary fruit. There's more to this. There's tobacco, there's leather, there's really nice secondary flavors coming through. And that's because it had some time in barrel and also some time to age in the bottle.
Well, this is a lovely one. You presumably had, apart from your best Albarino in the world ever medal with the Albarino, have you had medals with this?
Bardou, yeah, Bardou has got 94 points from, you love him or you hate him, Robert Parker.
Yeah, Robert Parker, yeah.
So he gave this 94, which would be one of the higher scores in the Languedoc. We're not necessarily big on, just scoring points for the sake of it, because sometimes it's just about the bigger and the jammier wine, and that's not really Laurent's style. But it's nice to get the recognition through those kind of...
Neasa, a bit of a question from earlier. You mentioned that the Bardou is a single vineyard wine. How close is it to, or what proximity is it to where you're growing the Albarino grapes?
So most of our Albarino is grown in the Corbière, and this is the Chinian. So they're two different appellations. They're about 45 minutes from each other. What they have in common is they're both limestone soils, so very, very stony soil. So this vine really struggles and has to go really deep. That makes for a more complex wine. You get less grapes, but more interesting grapes. The other thing is they're in the foothills of the mountains. So the Corbière is in the foothills of the Pyrenees, and the Chinian, where this is from, is in the foothills of the Massif Central. So the Carix Mountains, and it's so what you get is nice cool breezes coming down from the mountains, and that gives you a big difference between nighttime and daytime temperatures. It's called amplitude thermique, and it gives really nice aromatics to the wine. So you'd see with the Albarino and also this wine, wonderful aromas on the nose. That's developed by the grapes growing in this different daytime and nighttime temperatures.
Everyone's kind of said there's like, yeah, very like mixed spices, Christmas pudding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, really like
this time of year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Spices, yeah, a little bit of, yeah, you get the spices, a little bit of, I'd say chocolate, but like more like the, you know, like a high cocoa content chocolate.
Almost coffee like, but not quite.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's been a delicious evening. Neasa and Ken, thank you both so much for
thanks very much for the invitation.
Wisdom.
Fantastic event. Well done.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Neasa. Thanks, Ken. Thanks to Rita. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, 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 bye.
Are you singing?
You don't want me to sing. I'm drinking.
Are there a few of us left?
Okay, I'm gonna shut down now. Good night, all. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Oh, don't go.
Don't go. Don't leave me. Don't leave me this way.